We are here for a webinar on fundamentals of intellectual property as well as cyber law. Let me first introduce myself. I was asked to do that. I am Satish Anikinde, as you can see my name on the slide. I have done my LLB as well as LLM. LLB in Belgaum, whereas LLM from Pune, Symbiosis in Law College, and I have specialized in intellectual property. I have been teaching IP law, cyber law, along with other subjects since past 3 years. Now, when I was asked for a webinar on this topic, I asked a basic usual question to the ma'am that what is the background of the audience, and she said that they do not know anything about IP or cyber law. So and then I saw a syllabus, and there were so many topics, and it is impracticable to touch upon or teach all those topics in a matter of say 1 hour. So I'm trying my best to just let you the fundamentals, the basics of intellectual property, what this IP is about, and how does cyber law come into this IP, and how does it affect us. And as an MBA students or future entrepreneurs, how you can best avoid violating, infringing upon this intellectual property of someone else. So let us begin. I hope you can see my slide. So the first basic thing, what exactly is this intellectual property, right? So what does it include? You might have heard these words, a patent, a trademark, a copyright, but what actually this is? So according to one Miss Alexandra, the website, we can the words whatever we read, whether it is physical, that is offline, or online, the images which we see, videos we watch every day, the music we listen to. So intellectual property is involved in all of these things and much more. So the words, the images, videos, music, and most of it is available for free. Just go to internet, we download photos, we use it. We download videos, we download movies also, whether it is torrent or otherwise, right? Pirated movies. Tamil Rocks website, uh, they release a movie just a day when it is released in the movie theaters, a pirated version. So, and we are all guilty at some point of time of doing that. So, whatever this entire universe is, including all these things, it is usually made available to us for free, but free doesn't make it ours. Just because something is available free, it is not ours. It is, as rightly said, it is a intellectual property of someone else. And why do we call it intellectual? Because it involves creativity. It involves intellect of a person, and without that, you cannot create anything. If there is no creativity, then probably no one would want to require it. And the, this words, images, videos, music, they all come in copyright. Just one of the IPs, right? Everything is encompassed in copyright. Other than that, the products which we use, they could be patented. The technology which we use could be patented, right? Then there is another form, which is trademark, right? The brand name, the goodwill, the packaging, the color combination, a logo, a tagline, right? All these they come under trademark, right? So we have patents, we have trademarks, we have copyright. Then there are so many different forms which we shouldn't bother ourselves today. We just keep it very basic. Then first I will touch upon the subject of trademark. Then we can go to copyright, and then can go to cyber law. So as you can see on this particular slide, these are our the logos which we see every day. And even though for example, the logo of Apple, or say the Batman, or Puma, or Jaguar, we easily, we immediately identify ourselves with these logos, right? With these, whether it is a tagline. So for example, if I say I'm loving it, then immediately things which comes to your mind is McDonald's, right? And so on and so forth. So a lot can happen over coffee. That is the tagline of Cafe Coffee Day. Now, what all this is, it is a very carefully generated goodwill or a particular brand name of a particular product or service, right? And this functionality of trademark, that is distinguishing your goods or services from someone else, that is the main object of trademark. Because there could be tens and hundreds of competitors in a market, in a free market, without a monopoly. There, how are you going to distinguish your product, your service from that of others, right? And that is where trademark comes into picture. So a trademark could involve a visual symbol, whether it is a word or a label or a picture. Device here means a picture, and most importantly, it is distinctive in nature. It cannot be consisting of common words which we use in our day-to-day lives. No, the words have to be distinct. That is a general rule. There could be certain exceptions, but distinctive words or letters, numbers, drawings, pictures, color combination. Now, when we say Google, Google has four colors, right? We have yellow, green, red. So, a color combination, and the combination is fixed. You do not change it often. And as we all know, a logo or a brand name is nothing but trademark under intellectual property. What are the components of a trademark? What should a trademark consist of? So, first and foremost, it must be capable of being represented graphically, right? So, whatever you can put down on a piece of paper, whether it could be word, letter, diagram, and anything, but it should be being able to be represented graphically. And as I've already told you, distinguishing your goods or your services from that of someone else, others. Now, of course, there are so many things which trademark should not be, but more importantly, it cannot be of descriptive in nature. So, for example, you cannot use words like best, supreme, very good, excellent, outstanding, awesome. No. No, you can call your product, if you say, for example, have a trademark on the product, say supreme or excellent, then it gives you an unfair advantage over others. Because just because you name your product excellent doesn't mean your product is excellent. And so, under the trademark law, you are not supposed to describe the quality in your trademark. So, it should not have descriptive words. Even if you try to apply, you won't get registration, and other people can use it too. And second thing, it should never be deceptively similar to any other mark. What we call it, deceptive similarity. Deceptive is nothing but cheating, where a malapaidi intention is present. So you cannot never take advantage of an existing trademark to change certain alphabets, change certain phonetic sounds, but the entire of your intention is to take advantage of already existing trademark. Right? So this is not allowed. Absolutely no deceptive similarity to any other mark. And what could be different forms of trademark, right? So the first is word or a letter mark. It usually includes any particular word irrespective of the length of the words. Then you have figurative. So any logo, a picture, right? Service mark. Now, service mark is usually used in the service industry. So where there is no trading, there is no product to be sold, but there are services involved. So those people, so for example, if say Facebook, now Facebook, they do not sell any product, right? They just offer you their service. They offer you a mechanism to share for the people to share. So a service industry. And collective mark. So more about this collective mark in my next slide. Similarly, certification mark. So the first three are very easy to understand. So I'm not going to give any examples for first three, but 4 and 5, I have examples for you. Then sixth is well-known mark. Well-known mark is simply is not a different kind of mark, but any mark which is pretty much well known in the market. So you take, so for example, Tata or Reliance, any particular McDonald's, for example, these are all well-known marks, and under trademark law, they have been given an extra advantage, added advantage for well-known marks. And lastly, the seventh is unconventional. So the first six would fit into conventional trademarks, traditional trademarks, which all the countries recognize. But the seventh kind, that is unconventional, untraditional, non-traditional, whether it is color, sound, smell, or motion. Now this is a area which is not yet settled. India is not ready to grant trademarks to such unconventional trademarks, but many countries have, and I'll be quoting a few examples for the unconventional trademarks in my coming slides. Now, as I said, collective mark, as you can see in these images, whether it is CA, Chartered Accountant, CMA, Cost and Management Accountant, and of course, Advocate logo. Because generally, see, a trademark can be used only by a single person. So if you come up with a unique mark, you can prevent everyone else, you can prevent the entire world from using that mark. But that is not the case with a collective mark, because as the name itself suggests, it is used by a collection of people. So all chartered accountants are free to use this logo. Similarly, all CMAs, all advocates are free to use this logo. So that is what we call a collective mark. Then come to certification. Now, again, you will immediately get to know by looking at these images. So any certifying authority which is responsible to maintain standards in any particular area. So for example, if you take CE, right? So CE is a European standard which is for all electrical technological products. So if you take a power bank or a battery in your smartphone, so if you look at the battery, you can see the CE mark, or adapters, chargers. So all these are certified by CE. Similarly, you have ISO, that is again an international mark, International Organization for Standardization. So companies are also certified by ISO. So we say ISO 9001, ISO 8. There are so many parameters, classification. And you have Indian mark, that is by Bureau of Indian Standards. So BIS, hallmark for gold ornaments. Then ISI, again belonging to Bureau of Indian Standards. So if your product is up to that particular standard or level as prescribed by these authorities, then and only then you are allowed to use these marks. And so they say, Jago Grahak Jago. If you go to a jewelry shop, they say BIS hallmark. If it is there, it is of that particular quality, right? So certification marks you are supposed to use only if you are certified, if you have that particular standard or level. Then come to unconventional. So as I said, color. Now one example I have shown here, that is Heinz. So Heinz ketchup is quite famous in India, not Heinz beans, but this is US company, and Heinz beans has successfully applied and got a trademark for their blue color on this beans product. So all Heinz beans are sold in this particular blue, and they argued that people have started to identify our product because of this color. So even if you see it from afar without able to read, people are sure that this is Heinz beans. So they have successfully got a trademark for this blue color for this particular product. Okay. Then sound mark. So if you remember a Tom and Jerry cartoon, at the beginning of Tom and Jerry, you have a lion which roars, right? Metro Goldwyn Mayer, MGM. So that roar of a lion can be an example of sound mark. Or when Windows, your operating system starts, the sound of Windows, sound of Nokia, or sound of Yahoo. So Nokia or Yahoo, all these are examples of sound mark. Smell or scent. Now this is again a very interesting aspect of trademark. Um, you might have heard this company known as Verizon. It is a US company in phones, telecom. So all the shops, outlets of Verizon, the moment you enter Verizon, they have a very peculiar smell or scent or aroma. That particular aroma is common in all Verizon outlets across the US, maybe across the globe, I'm not sure, but across the US, they have a very peculiar smell, and they have got a trademark on that smell. So any rival telecom company cannot use that particular smell in their respect of their services. Right. Another example which I have written on the slide is a Netherlands company, a Dutch company. It manufactures tennis balls. Now you have all you have seen tennis. So that particular tennis ball, they have given a smell of a fresh grass. Right. So the moment so when you play tennis with those balls, whether you play it on lawn or clay or hard court, doesn't matter. But if the aroma which you get from those balls is of fresh grass. So that company has successfully got a trademark for that particular smell of grass to be used on a tennis ball. Right. So I hope you are getting an idea about how these things works. And yeah, before we do, whatever questions you may have, you can type them in the chat columns. And once we finish this session, we can go through those. I can answer those questions. And shape mark. This is the classic example of a shape mark. And there is a very interesting story about how this particular shape came to be attached to Coca-Cola. And according to that story, the person who was in charge of this, he was tasked to give a particular shape which people could identify even in complete darkness. That means if there is no light at all, and there are so many bottles, and if the person just touches the bottle, holds the bottle, he or she should be able to identify that it is Coca-Cola. And with that thing in mind, this task was given to the people in charge. And then they came up with this particular design, shape of bottle. And today, of course, there are different shapes also, because this is a glass bottle. But if there is any glass bottle, it will be of this shape. And that is a very unique thing about Coca-Cola. Similarly, a very famous chocolate which you might have had at least once, Toblerone, the pyramid shaped chocolates. Okay, this is very unique to Toblerone. Similarly, now here Toblerone has got a trademark, a shape mark for their chocolates. Even Nestle Kit Kat, they wanted to have a trademark for their bar shaped Kit Kat chocolate. But again, they haven't got it for Nestle Kit Kat, but Toblerone has got a trademark for this. So the point is, these are all different examples of trademarks. As like I said, there are very few basic components which everyone has to follow. And once you register for a trademark, again, it is not compulsory to register your trademark. Right. So if you have observed, there are two logos. One is TM with a circle, right? One is R with a circle. So if your trademark is not registered, you cannot use the R symbol. No. But again, as I said, the registration is not compulsory. So you can create a new trademark for you, for your goods or services, and then you can start using TM and a circle. So just to inform everyone that you're supposed to use this particular logo as a trademark for your company. Thereby, it is a warning to other people not to imitate, not to copy. Plus, of course, an additional step always recommended is go register your trademark. Right? Once you register, once you fulfill all the formalities, you get it for a period of 10 years, and which can further be renewed for a period of 10 years and so on for unlimited period of time. Right? And once you register, then and only then you can use the vocab R with a circle. Right? So this is all basics of trademark. I'm not going into details of anything. Now, having studied trademarks, let us come to equally interesting topic, that is copyright. Now, many of you might have an idea because we read books, we have studied textbooks, and you might have seen this word copyright. You might have, when we see movies, when we see, we listen to music, you always see this particular symbol, copyright symbol. Again, like trademark, even copyright registration is not compulsory. Okay, the moment you create anything new and original, right? Whether it is a story, a song, a movie, anything, a poem, anything. The moment you create it, you get a copyright over it. There is no need to register. Again, of course, it is recommended that you register because if anyone infringes if anyone violates your copyright, you can easily go to the courts of law and your registration acts as an evidence there. But having said that, law doesn't make it mandatory to register your copyright. If I'm sitting here right now, even the way I am lecturing, the way I'm speaking, that is my copyright. No, the content may not be because the content is open source. But the way of giving lectures, the notes which I create on my own intellect, that is my copyright. No one can use it without my express permission. A very common website which we use every moment of our lives. At the bottom of the screen, you can see Facebook, then copyright symbol and the year. Right, so you are supposed to use this symbol on your content at the time of creating. So when the data was created, when the work was created, that year is supposed to be written and with the copyright symbol. Similarly, a book by Dan Brown, a very famous author. Again, you can see copyright 2009. So maybe it was published in 2009. You can also see information about trademark. So in the third line, you can see Doubleday and the DD Colophone are registered trademarks of Random House. Right. So they are making it very clear, without any doubt, that this is an intellectual property and it belongs to us. Right. So no one is supposed to copy it. So this is a CD, nowadays obsolete. No one uses a CD. But again, you can see all rights reserved. Then you have trademark and copyright symbols and the year. Right. So, but what exactly this copyright is, and in very literal meaning, anyone who holds a copyright gets a right to copy that material. Right. So, for example, if you write a book, and you are an author, you're not a publisher, so you do not have a printer, you do not have the system to publish. So most of the times you will go to a publisher, you sell your manuscript, you give your manuscript. If he's interested, he will publish it. So what happens is, you actually give the copyright. It belongs to you because you created it, but you transfer that copyright to the publisher. So the publisher can expressly make copies of your work, that is print books, and sell it, publish it, sell it. Right? So in very, very basic terms, copyright is nothing but a right to copy. But again, it is not a single right. It is a bundle of rights. You get varied amount of rights, but many rights when you get a copyright. For example, one is reproduction, which I've already told you. Right to reproduce. So you copy, you publish. Then second right is communication to the public. It includes all these things: publishing, distribution, perform. So for example, if it is a dance, or if you are a singer, you are going to perform it in the public, right? So perform, display your work. So for example, a photograph or a work of architecture, a painting, a drawing can be displayed in a museum. So display, sell, rent, etc. That all comes under communication to the public. Then adaptation and translation. So a movie, a book getting adapted into a movie, or vice versa, right? Or a book getting adapted into a play as a drama in theater, right? So these are adaptations as well as translations. So usually a copyright consists of all of these rights, and that is why it is known as a bundle of rights. I hope you are with me till now. And so, what are the different kinds of works that are protected under copyright? Because we only know a book or a movie, music, right? But what technically, what are different works? What are different works? There are six main works, and I'm not going to go into details of all those. We are just going to have a very quick overview of all these works. One is literary, the first. So literary doesn't mean just story, prose, poetry. No, whatever you write, anything and everything you write, provided it is original, comes under literary works. And books are just a common example. Even the answers which students write in the examinations, the questions which are set in the question papers, they come under literary works. Then softwares or books, dissertations, or panchang, right? Application forms, whatever you can read here on the slide. It is just an indicative list of what all can come under literary work. A focus on the first example, that is software. Now, it is a very unique thing. Why? Because it comes under copyright, but you might have heard this word software patents. And people more, in the recent times, people are going for patents on the softwares. So how can software come under copyright as well as patent? So hold on to that thought. If time permits, I'll definitely touch upon that very unique thing of software patents and copyright in software. But prima facie, that is generally software is covered under literary works, not by the word software but computer program. That is nothing but a software. Then you have dramatic works. So dramatic works doesn't mean only dramas. It includes a choreography or any dumb is mute show, silent show, or any scenic arrangements. So sets, for example. Now, one food for thought. Now choreography is the dance, right? There is a choreographer and he tells you to dance in a particular way, and you dance. How is that protected? Because copyright tells you that it should be able to put it down in a graphical form, just like trademarks. And choreography, can it be written? The answer is yes. As you can see on the slide, this is one way to write it down a choreography. So as you know, I'm not expert in this, but as far as I understand, for each of these moves, so head, shoulders, waist, knees, and the floor, there are different signs, different symbols, and so a particular step can be successfully written down in their notations, and this notation is protected under dramatic works under copyright. Right, so there are different ways, but this is just one example of choreography, how it can be written down and how each step has a particular way to be written down. Then you have musical works. So this musical works includes only music and not the lyrics. So if you write a song, I'm saying write a song, then the lyrics of the song, they are not covered here, but they are covered under the first head, that is literary works, right? So anything is written, so in a song, the lyrics come under literary works, but the music behind it comes under musical works. Again, music, we usually hear music, we do not read it, but you can read it. Why? Because there are annotations. So again, image, representative image. Again, I'm not an expert, I don't know to read this particular thing, but people who are expert, they can actually, from these notations, they can reproduce music. Right? So this written thing is covered under musical works, but the lyrics are covered under literary works. That is the third category of work. You have artistic works. It includes so many things, but in simple language, anything which is related to art, right? So a painting, sculpture, a drawing, engraving, photograph, any work and work of architectural or artistic craftsmanship. So all of these are pretty much easy to understand. So anything related to art comes under artistic work, and I've highlighted photograph. Why? Because wherever I go, I definitely use this example. Again, I'll just give you a background of this story. I'll not tell you, the conclusion. We can keep it at the end. Now you can see this is not a mirror image of me or yours. This is a black ape found in Indonesia, and the story behind this is a photographer, a wildlife photographer from UK. He went to Indonesia. He was researching for these apes, black apes, and he positioned his camera along with a tripod, and all equipment, whatever it was, in this particular area where the ape is found. He set it up and he came back, and then the monkey, this ape came, and it's inherent nature to play with things, to explore things, right? That's what monkeys do. It came and it started to explore the camera. It did not know what it was doing, of course. It started to explore and play with this, and it played, it went. Then the photographer came, and when he developed those, or when he saw those images, he could see a host of images, including these so-called perfect selfies clicked by this ape. And then these photos became viral, known as monkey selfies. Now, why we are discussing this is photograph. Any person who clicks the photograph, he gets copyright over that photograph, right? So if I take my mobile right now and click a photograph of this place, I will, of course, this place is now might be a public place, okay? But for that photograph, I am the copyright holder because I have clicked it with my phone or anyone's phone, doesn't matter. So the question is, who owned the copyright in this particular photo? Because technically speaking, the photographer never clicked it, right? It was the monkey who clicked it. So can the monkey be given copyright? It sounds very silly, but you had this, PETA organization working for animals. It claimed that this person, photographer, cannot be taking the benefit from this image, which he is not clicked. And he said, the organization said that the copyright should be given to a monkey. So what do you think? Think for a moment. We'll come back to this at the end. This was the photographer, Mr. David Slater, 2011. Anyway, keep that pending. Keep that pending. Then the fifth work is cinematograph films. So it is nothing but a simple audio-visual recording. With audio, without audio, doesn't matter, but video is must. So visual recording comes under film. And the last but not the least is sound recordings. So any sound which is recorded in any device. Earlier you had those tapes, big gramophones. Then you had cassette recorders. Nowadays you have digital recorders. So anything which is recorded is a sound recording. Now, so far we have seen these 6 different types of copyrightable works. But in a given work, you can find all these 6 together. How? For example, take a movie, take a Hindi movie, right? A cinema. Now, in this particular cinema, all the story, the script, the dialogues, the lyrics of the song, they are covered under the first, that is literary works. Then you have the music composition, musical works. The choreography, the performance comes under dramatic works. Then you have the sets. Nowadays, no one uses a set. They shoot on actual locations. But if you have a specific set created for that particular movie, comes under artistic. Even diagrams, etc. Capturing of that musical work on that is sound recordings, and then capturing all those things on a film, that is a cinematograph film. So this is a very classic example of how all these different works, they come under a single particular product, right? Now, how long is this protected? I mean, trademarks we saw, it was just 10 years, but in copyright, it is lifetime of the author plus 60 years. So author is the one who creates the work, right? So if I am writing a story, I'm the author. Till I am alive, I have that copyright. After I die, I or my heirs, legal representatives, they have it for a period of 60 years, right? So that is what we call lifetime of the author plus 60 years for the first four works. That is LDMA. But when it comes to films or sound recordings, because these two works they are owned by a publisher or the producer. So producer of a movie owns the copyright. So there is no lifetime of the author because it is a company usually or a partnership form, not a natural person. So there you have just 60 years, right? And after 60 years, this data comes into public domain. That means anyone can use it freely without having the need to take express permission from the author. Right? So after 60 years, it is the property of everyone. Initially, it was just 50 years, but Indian government changed it. Why? Because Rabindranath Tagore's poems, his work, it was supposed to come into public domain at the end of 50 years. And there was a demand from his representatives that please increase it for some years. And then they changed it to 60 years, but that is perfectly allowed under international conventions. So the more you give, the better it is, but you cannot give less. So now, right now it is 60 years. Okay. Now there is one topic in your syllabus that is copyright in online marketing. Now it is not something different. Whatever you have studied right now, it is same. But as an entrepreneur, when you have your own website or if you have your own blogs, right, the social media accounts, you post so many different things. You can, for the sake of your article or your work or your company, you may take some video from some website, you may take some image from some website, right? So how can you be sure that you are not copying something which belongs to someone else, right? So I'm going to tell you very simple tips from which you can protect your copyright. You can protect yourself from copying someone else's work. It might seem very silly, but it is very important. First and foremost thing is, wherever possible, take express permission from the copyright holder. So see, and we generally get it. When we are copying it blindly, we know that we are copying it. So as far as possible, you go to the try to contact the copyright owner and take permission. Most of the times, the owner would be very happy to share his things with you, as long as you acknowledge him, right? You tell him, or you tell people that you have taken the work. For example, in my first slide, the meaning of intellectual property, I had taken it from a website known as alexandraroad.com, right? So I just mentioned it there. That is the least thing you can do. So the first thing you do is take permission, if not practicable or not possible. Second thing is acknowledge or her, right? So whatever source you use, whether it is any text, image, videos, anything, statistics, figures, from wherever you take it, please acknowledge the source. That is the least thing you can do if you cannot take permission. That is the second step. Then there is something known as fair use or fair dealing. Now under section 52 of the Copyright Act, there are certain exceptions where even if you use without permission, you will not be guilty of copying. For example, if you are using it for private or personal use, research purposes, if a genuine good faith criticism or review, right? So for example, a book is published or a movie is released, there are reviewers who read it, who watch it, and they post it online, their review. So for the sake of review, that is fine. And reporting of current events or educational instructional use, right? So whatever happens in schools, colleges, and for the purpose of instructional use, if you want to use some copyrighted work, you can use it without permission. That comes under fair use or fair dealing, right? So that law has allowed you to comes under exceptions. And again, non-commercial public use, so, which is not being used to gain revenue or make profit. That is non-commercial public use. But the bottom line, whenever you are in doubt, always assume that the data is copyrighted. Always assume that it belongs to someone else, right? Because it is internet is such a thing that you never know, right? So whenever in doubt, assume that it belongs to someone else and never try to appropriate someone else's work as you know. Don't pass it. Don't pass someone else's work as your work. Not allowed. All right. So that was about copyright. Now, coming to again equally, if not more interesting topic of cyber law. I hope till now you might at least have had a fair idea about trademarks as well as copyrights. Now, how does cyber law come into picture? Cyber law, also called as information technology law, IT law. Primarily, it involves data, information, right? And nowadays, we are constantly online. Okay, the moment we wake up till we sleep, we have either our smartphones in our hand or laptops for work purposes or for recreational, fun purposes. So, our data are private, whether it is private or work, official data, it is constantly under threat from people, right? Whether they're hackers or otherwise. So, cyber law has become a very much important aspect of our lives. Let us see a few basic things about cyber law. Now, IT law, cyber law can be used interchangeably. As I said, we are using technology for all purposes of our lives, right? Our phone has become smart. Nowadays, we have these smart devices, Google Home or Alexa. In Western countries, an entire home is a smart home, right? So what we call IoT, Internet of Things. Everything is connected to the internet, right? So Google probably knows much more about you than our own family knows, right? So where do we go? Where do we work? Where do we stay? Where do we eat? Which movies do we watch? Which websites do we watch? What restaurants we go at? Where do we stay? What trains we take? What flights we book? Everything is with Google, and that is very very scary. And that is why our data is always susceptible, always prone to theft, right? So whether it is data theft, hacking, virus, very common word these days because of coronavirus, identity theft. But viruses can be digital as well as physical. Now, before we actually see some interesting things about cyber law, let us first see what this IT Act is about. Why this was enacted and what does it involve, right? The features of IT Act, enacted in 2000, significantly amended in 2008. Again, I'm not going into details of the technicalities of the IT Act. Okay, just a very brief overview of IT Act. The first thing which government wanted to do was recognize e-commerce. E-commerce doesn't mean just Amazon and Flipkart, right? Those are e-commerce websites, no doubt, but we are talking in a very general sense. The word electronic commerce, so alternative to paper-based systems. So we hear this word paperless offices. Right? So the government actually intends to make their offices also paperless, or at least reduce the use of papers, to a very significant way. So that is, this IT Act is one step, and one very good example I can give you is DigiLocker app. Now, previously, if police caught you, you had to show physical actual license, right? Nowadays, you don't need to do that. If you have a DigiLocker app, you can show the copy of your license which is in DigiLocker. Same thing with PAN card, your Aadhaar, right? Many of the state governments have also allowed you to upload your 10th mark sheets, 12th mark sheet certificates, right? So you don't need to give physical copies, soft copies sufficient. And whatever filing is supposed to be done, again it is switched to e-filing. No need to physically file everything. Similarly, e-signatures, what people call as digital signature. Right? I don't need to sign physically on a paper nowadays. I can have a digital signature with a very unique username and password given to me. With that particular credentials, I can sign any document on the internet, and that is a proof that I have validly signed it. Right? So, there is a digital signature. Then there was a need to establish a separate authority to hear or to resolve IT doubts, cyber crimes. Right? So you have nowadays you have cyber cells in the police stations, specifically designated cells for cyber crimes. So initially you had this Cyber Regulations Appellate Tribunal, then it was CAT. Nowadays it is switched or migrated to Telecom Dispute Settlement and Appellate Tribunal to resolve cyber disputes. And then cyber crimes, very important, which I'm going to focus a little more in this particular session. Chapter 11 of this act speaks about cyber crimes. Then you have the power which government has to censor internet, that is to block internet whenever it is against the, the public interest, right? So censoring power the government has. And then you have CERT, that is Computer Emergency Response Team of India. This is a very highly sophisticated computer response team for any computer related crimes, whether it is private or public. Many times we hear China hacking into their enemy countries, so to say, Russia hacking into other systems, North Korea does it, Pakistan has done it many times on Indian websites. So, and I will be dealing with some examples, real life examples of such cyber crimes in my next slides. But all these things, whenever these things happen, you have a dedicated response force in CERT. And one very unique aspect of IT Act is, for those people who do not have any legal background, all our acts, right, our laws, constitution, that is all applicable to Indian territory. It doesn't go beyond our territory. But IT Act is one among very few which actually extend beyond our territory. Right? So this IT Act is applicable to any person outside India, irrespective of the nationality, irrespective of the place. Right? Provided the computer system through which this crime has taken place, that is located in India. Now, this is actually a deal breaker, right? Because people who are smart enough to hack remotely, they will not do it, sitting in India or using a server in India. They will have tens of different servers, and those servers will be located in very remote countries, different countries. So they are actually smarter than what we are in framing our laws. Okay. Now come to a very few real life examples of cyber crimes. Before that, what is a cyber crime? Very simple. Any crime taking place in a cyber world, cyber space, a virtual world. Right? So a murder taking place in a physical world is a physical crime. But hacking takes place with the help of computers, so it is a cyber crime. So anything with the help of computers or information technology tools. Now we can actually divide the cyber crimes into three different categories. We are not going into details of these categories. We are not going into technicalities, but from a layman's perspective, from a common man's perspective, the first thing would be hacking without any intention to commit any further crime. Why do you hack? You don't, in this first category, you don't intend to steal anything. You don't want data, you don't want money, right? You don't want anything, but you are still hacking into someone else's system. So one example could be many websites are hacked by Pakistan. Their intention could be to steal data, no doubt, but many times the less expert people, less expert hackers, they just want to make fun or create chaos, and they hack into website and they show some very funny or sometimes obscene image on the home page. So you go to, say for example, our university. You go to the university website, and it happened once. Someone had hacked into the website main page, home page, and when people accessed it, something else came up. Right. So there is no intention to steal anything, right? But people do it. And one example which I want to quote here is Aadhaar chief. Now, right now he is the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India chief, Mr. R.S. Sharma. Back then, he was chief of UIDAI, Aadhaar Authority. Now, there are so many talks about how Aadhaar is not secure enough. Right? People can easily hack into your private information by the Aadhaar number. And so this Mr. Sharma, what he did, he displayed his Aadhaar number on Twitter. Right? He tweeted it saying that this is my Aadhaar number, and I gave an open challenge to all to hack into anything of mine just on the basis of Aadhaar number. Right? And then people, enthusiastic people, started to explore things, and according to one reports, one person was successfully able to hack into his account, a bank account, and he took 1 rupee out of his bank account, and he again tweeted it saying that, sir, you just with the help of your Aadhaar number, this is your account number and this is IFS code, and I have taken 1 rupee from your bank account. Right? Now, how much it was because of Aadhaar number, we don't know. Right? Because he was a public official, his accounts would have been displayed at some government websites too. But the point is, he then again said that no, it is not because of Aadhaar number, because it might have been because of something else. Right? But the point I am trying to tell you here is, this is the first category where you hack into something without any further bad intentions. And the second is unauthorized access, again hacking, with intention to commit further offenses, whether it is theft, fraud, misappropriation, etc. Again, look at one example. Marriott International, a 5-star hotel chain, a global chain. When in Belgavi you have Fairfield Marriott. It bought Starwood Hotels in 2016 for $13.6 billion. And during these 3 years, 2015 to 2018, 38 crore, that is 383 million customer records were stolen by hackers. Now, your question might be, what would they steal from a hotel website or their systems? But coming to think of it, when you go and when you check into a hotel, you now if it is an international travel, you give them a copy of a passport, right? Then you pay. If it is online, you have credit or debit card or your UPI IDs nowadays. Then you have your date of birth, your names, your addresses, your phone numbers. So all these data was stolen by those hackers. Right? So you can see 25 million, 2.5 crore passport details, 8 million payment card, birth dates, addresses, phone numbers, and whatnot, email addresses. And although prima facie it may sound very harmless, but you never know. How they can, even if they don't harm you directly, but they can sell this information to people who want it. They can sell it for money. Right? Recently, after this coronavirus pandemic, Zoom app is a common word these days. No one knew Zoom. Not much of people knew. But Zoom, from average of 10 million users, it suddenly went up to 200 million users in a matter of 1-2 months because of the pandemic and lockdown. And there were vulnerabilities in Zoom app. Because Zoom was not made for 200 million users at the same time. It was only meant for big industries with very secure internet systems, with firewalls and all those things. Right? So, and he admitted himself, the CEO, that it was not meant for 200 million users. But the point is, even when we started using it here, hackers were able to steal data of Zoom users, and they sold it in the dark web, for, as let's say, $100, $50. They sold it. Now, for them, the data doesn't have much value, but they need money. They steal and they sell it to people, and then people can use it, for various, means, ways. And a very interesting example. This is a beautiful, hotel in Austria, a four-star hotel. Now the thing is, between 2016 and 17, this hotel was hacked into four times by hackers. Why? Now they did not have traditional locks for their doors. Nowadays we have digital locks. They have electronic keys for all the rooms. Okay, and so there was no physical lock. If you had to open, you had to have electronic keys. And so hackers, they hacked into the system of this hotel, and thereby what happened is all the hotel could not issue new electronic keys to their customers from on the day when it was hacked, from that day. So the existing locks, they worked fine, fortunately, but people who were checking into their hotels, the hotel was not able to generate electronic key from their systems. Why? Because the system was compromised. And you might imagine it would have been very embarrassing even if the existing keys would have been, frozen. So if someone would have been inside, he wouldn't be able to come outside, and likewise, right? So from the day the system was compromised, they could not do anything. And funny thing is, the hackers, they demanded ransom of 2 bitcoins. And today, 1 bitcoin is worth 7 lakh rupees, okay, Indian rupees. That time it was around 65,000 rupees in 2016, a highly fluctuating cryptocurrency. So they had to pay 2 bitcoins, around 1,30,000 rupees odd, just to take their system, back, just to unfreeze it, right? And this was a lesson they learned hard way because it was hacked 4 times. Then finally, the manager, the owner, he changed all the locks from electronic to traditional metal keys. So there are no electronic locks now in that hotel. So he said, let's forget about this. And then they came to the old, way of having it metal keys. And he also got a good feedback from the customers. They said that we get a very homely feeling when we use a metal key rather than a electronic key. So the point here is, because we have IoT, Internet of Things, everything is connected to Internet. It makes these things vulnerable. One more example which I have not mentioned here, but which I remember right now, in a casino in the United States, I forgot the state, there was a fish tank. That was not a normal fish tank. That fish tank was a smart fish tank. You could access the fish tank remotely. So you could change the temperature, you could decide when the water should be changed and when the feeding should be done to the fishes, along with the salination, right? Proper salination, proper temperature. This was, could be done remotely, and it was in a casino. Now sounds very good, right? Hi-fi fish tank. But hackers were able to hack into this fish tank because no one thought that to secure this fish tank, because no one thought that anyone would hack into a fish tank. But through the fish tank, they hacked into the main system of casino, right? And you can know how much money is involved in, casino. Now, I don't know how much it was, how much harm it caused, because the casino did not release it, for their own purposes. But the point I'm trying to tell you is, the more internet you have in your life, the more vulnerable you become to hackers and to cyber crimes. Okay, so how many of you know this? A horse. Now, this is a Trojan horse, right? You may not know the actual story behind this. Some of you might know it, and I'm trying to keep it brief due to paucity of time. There was a city of Troy in Europe, and the Romans wanted to conquer the city of Troy. But the people in Troy, they were so hard fighting warriors that it was not possible for the Romans to conquer them for a considerable period of time. So what they did, they had a idea. They said that, okay, we resign. We no longer are able to conquer you. We surrender. They showed their white flags, and majority of the army was retreating, was going back. And the people from Troy, they saw this, and they thought that finally, these Romans are leaving the city, and so they were very happy. And the second day, they came out of their cities, and they saw this particular uh, big horse made of wooden material at their doorstep, outside of their city. And they thought that this is a goodwill gesture, a gesture of peace by the Romans. And so they accepted this, they took this horse, they came inside their highly secure city, and they kept it, and then they slept that day. But it was not a normal horse, it was not a gesture of peace, because as you can see in the image, soldiers were hiding inside this particular horse. Okay, and when at night, when everyone was asleep and the guards, they were sleeping, these few people, they came outside this horse, they opened the gates, they killed the security guards who were there, opened the gates and allowed the entire army to come in. Then you can imagine that the Troy was destroyed in a day, which Romans could not do for months together, but they did it in one day. And why we are discussing this? Because nowadays in cyber crimes, in digital world, you have Trojans. What are these? These seem very genuine, innocent links. So if you open your email, you might get an email from income tax department, which is saying that you need to pay advance tax of so and so. If you have already paid, ignore. But if not, please visit this link and check whether you are eligible or whether you have to pay or not. Something like that. And you think that it is from income tax website, and you click on the link. The moment you click on the link, you are allowing the horse to enter your city. You never know what happens next. So there might be some virus which is hidden. Once you click the link, the virus secretly gets downloaded in your system, and then anything could happen. You could lose access to your computers, your operating system, your data could be stolen, anything. And that is how this Trojan virus got named from this Trojan horse. Right. And the last category, destruction of digital information through, again, Trojan horses or viruses. Now, one example I have put it here is WannaCry. WannaCry, as the name itself tells you, people literally, they thought should they cry, because in 2017, 3 lakh computers were affected by this virus in 150 countries, including some in India, and they demanded $300 to $600 worth of bitcoins. Because what happens is, this WannaCry software virus was this, that it actually froze your entire operating system, so you could not do anything, right? And instead of your home page, this particular page used to get displayed on your computers, right? And you can see the level of the hackers. Look at the systematic hacking which they are doing. If you look at the screen, you have FAQs sort of, what happened to my computer? Can I recover? How do I pay? The left hand side you have payment will be raised on so and so date, time left for payment, your files will be lost on this date, about, and then send bitcoins here on this link, check payment, decrypt. So look at the sophistication of the people who do this, right? And many people had to pay that much of bitcoins to get their computers back. You can imagine how deep this is. Although it may not have affected personally you and me, but many people in the world got affected by this particular software. And so I'm coming to the end of this session. I will quickly go through some of the cyber crimes mentioned under the IT Act. So 65 is tampering with the source code, that is the software. Then computer related offenses in section 66 includes unauthorized access, disrupting or damaging a particular system, sending offensive messages. Now section 66A was a section which was abused by police a lot. Now I will tell you a very small example. In Maharashtra, Shiv Sena head, that is Bal Thackeray, he died a few years ago, and he had so much of influence in Maharashtra. When he died, there was a call by Shiv Sena that Mumbai should be kept one for 1 day. One girl, she posted on Facebook that why should the entire city of Mumbai be called off, that is kept closed, just because Bal Thackeray has died, and she posted it on Facebook. One friend of hers, liked that Facebook post. Suddenly, that post became so viral that Shiv Sena Karyakartas, they threatened these two girls. They went to a clinic of one of the uncles of the girl. They vandalized the clinic. They threatened the uncle, as they usually do, the politicians do. So they did everything, and then the Mumbai police, with that pressure, they filed FIRs against those two girls for under Section 66A, that is sending offensive messages. Because this 66A was such a wide and open-ended section that if you could hurt anyone's sentiments, right, defame someone, that is offend someone, you could be booked under 66A. And those two girls were, they were kept in jail for some days, and ultimately people filed a petition in the Supreme Court of India, and Supreme Court studied that section and struck out that section from the act. Supreme Court said this section has given so much wide power to the police that police are misusing it. The wordings are not proper. So that section was held unconstitutional in 2015 in that particular case. Right. So nowadays the police are not supposed to use this section 66A. And you have identity theft under 66C and D, violation of privacy, cyber terrorism, obscene material 67, pornography A, and child pornography B. Okay, and so all these, and I'm just keeping it very simple. There are so many other crimes also. If you look at the punishments under IT Act, you have imprisonment and also you have fine. Minimum of 3 years, maximum of life sentence. Fine will range from 1 lakh to 10 lakh. So this was about basics of copyright, trademark, and IT Act. So now I have ended my session here. As I was saying, the monkey selfie thing, if you remember it, as I said, the photographer had not clicked that particular image, right? And PETA was saying that the monkey should be given copyright. So what do you think? Right? So to conclude this particular example, he started using those images on his website, making money out of it. PETA comes into picture. He says that no, you did not click it. It belongs to the monkey. And they actually filed a case against this person in the courts. Went to the court. Court looked at the section and said that the word used is person. Any person who clicks, and monkey is not a person, right? It is an animal. So they said that animals, they do not have any right under copyright under this law. So first thing is clear, animals do not have anything. So who should own copyright in this then? Court rightly said, see, although the photographer did not click it, but it was because of his efforts, he went there personally, set up the camera, the tripod, everything. He made it possible for the monkey to click it. Right? So if not for this photographer, these images would never have been clicked. So rightly the copyright belongs to this person, although he did not personally click it. But again, they went into appeal, all those things happened, and finally a settlement was drawn between these two people. So this person said that, okay, whatever revenues I earn from this image, out of that a certain percent I will use for the benefit of this species in Indonesia, because this is one of the endangered species in Indonesia. So whatever revenue I get, I will use a certain amount for the benefit, upliftment, or for securing them. And it was settled, right? So that was it. So I have completed my session. I hope you have understood. If you have any doubts, you can ask me. I hope you have understood the topics. I have kept it really brief. Okay, the fundamentals, and I have not gone into details of any of these topics. So I hope you have understood. If you have any doubts, feel free to ask me. So we have a question here: how to avoid copyright infringement? Okay, so as I said, um, in the tips which I gave you, if it doesn't belong to you, if you have not created it, right, then it means that it has been created by someone else, right? So if you want to use someone else's data, first take permission, seek permission. If it is not possible or practicable to seek permission, you acknowledge the source. So whether you take any image or any video, anything, any text. Nowadays, for our doctoral thesis or dissertations or our research papers, articles, many people, they just take material from different websites, combine it and publish it. That is not how you're supposed to do it, because the university has strict plagiarism rules, anti-plagiarism rules. If you copy, you could, your paper could be cancelled. You could be suspended from, getting your doctoral degree, also. So whatever you do, and many people think that if I take the idea but try to express it in own words, then it is fine. Again, no. Just paraphrasing something doesn't absolve you of your responsibility. So people, what they do, if it is active voice, change it into passive voice, right? Paraphrase, change the language, change the words. Even paraphrasing is not allowed, right? So simple tip is, don't copy. If you are taking it somewhere, refer the particular source, seek permission. What is the cost of filing a patent or a copyright? Now again, see, copyright is the cost. I wouldn't know the exact figure because it is different for different jurisdictions. But if you talk about patents, it is generally costlier than copyright, right? Because so much more is at stake when it is a patent. But I don't want to put a particular figure because exactly I wouldn't know the exact figure. How safe it is to use digital payment apps like PhonePe, Google Pay? They promise that the app are 100% secure. Yes, a good question. Many years ago, I'll tell you one small example. There is a ethical hacker known as Ankit Fadia. Okay? I don't know if you have heard of him. He was responsible. He was one of the members in the team which helped the US decode the messages of Al Qaeda when the World Trade Organization was attacked. So Ankit Fadia, he had a course, online course on ethical hacking, and I was in standard 11. I took that particular course, and there in our initial lectures or online lectures, he asked one thing: how many of you use Google? How many of you use Gmail? How many of you use internet? And most of us raised their hands. He said, stop using it. Stop using internet. Why? Because he said, no one can be 100% sure that it is safe or it is foolproof. Because internet is such a thing that although you might have the best firewalls, best secure systems, you can never be 100% sure. So the question, how is it safe to use Google Pay, PhonePe? There is, I can say yes, I can say no. Yes, because Google is involved. You know that Google is, it has a goodwill, a brand name, so it has secure features. But again, you can never be sure of any app which is internet connected to internet. You can never be sure. If there are no any other things, I would like to end this particular session. It was nice talking to you. Ideally, I would have liked a very live audience, but again, due to coronavirus, it is not possible. So I thank IMER for inviting me again to this wonderful institution and giving me an opportunity to present myself. Thank you so much.